Welcome to StreetGangs.com, SGTV. Early this morning, Johannes Mehserle, the former BART police officer that was found guilty in the involuntary manslaughter death of Oscar Grant, was released from Los Angeles County Jail after serving 1 year of his 2-year sentence. Mehserle was found guilty last July of involuntary manslaughter, and Judge Robert Perry remanded him into custody. When he came back for sentencing in November of that year, he already had about 146 days credit, so he only needed 219 days to complete 365, and that brings us to today, June 13th, when he was released. Now, according to the LA County Sheriff's website, Mehserle was released at 12:01 a.m., 1 minute after midnight. So he never appeared in court at 8:30 for a scheduled hearing that many people were talking about, and the family wasn't too happy about that.
Hurt, I'm angry. I lost a nephew that I truly loved. He was the best man in my wedding, along with my son. We had a special relationship. Within the last 24 hours, then we get informed that the actual hearing that is scheduled to take place on June 13th has been vacated by Robert Perry. Is there going to be a hearing? I'm not certain. I do know that we've been jerked around with the release date of the hearing and the information that we should be receiving as victims of this felony.
Now, Mehserle is fortunate that he was only sentenced to 2 years in prison for a couple reasons. One, 2 years is the minimum of involuntary manslaughter. He could have been sentenced to 3, or Judge Perry could have also given him 4 years, which is the max, and which he's given to many other defendants in his courtroom. But another reason why he's fortunate is because the gun enhancement that the jury found true was dismissed by Judge Perry. Now, the gun enhancement also carries a sentence of 3 years, 4 years, or 10 years. So if we assume that Judge Perry would have given him the minimum on the gun enhancement as well, he would have been sentenced to at least 5 years. 5 years would have been the minimum. But that enhancement was dismissed. And the reason why it was dismissed was because the jury came back with an involuntary manslaughter verdict. That suggests that they believed that Mehserle did commit an accident. And when you find someone guilty of involuntary manslaughter, you can also find them guilty of the gun enhancement. The gun enhancement can only be applied to the second-degree murder or voluntary manslaughter. And Judge Perry did not provide the adequate jury instructions so that would have came back with the proper verdict, with the proper enhancement. So the question is, if the jury would have been directed that you cannot find the gun allegation to be true with involuntary manslaughter, would they have came back with a different verdict? I guess we'll never know, but you can't come back with an involuntary manslaughter, meaning that we think it's an accident, and then find them guilty of a gun enhancement, which suggests that you did something deliberate. So that's why Judge Perry outright dismissed the enhancement, and ultimately Mehserle only received a 2-year sentence. And I call this sentence the minimum, because he was found guilty on the minimum of the 3 charges he was facing, the lesser of the 3 charges. He was sentenced to the minimum number of years that involuntary manslaughter carries, and he had the gun enhancement completely dismissed, which minimized his sentence even more. So he walked away with a 2-year sentence, and that infuriated the family. So what's next?
What happens to Mehserle, we know today, is in God's hands. He's going to live with what he did, and he's going to suffer from that. But our ultimate goal is to contact the Department of Justice and insist upon them bringing criminal charges for civil rights violations. That's right. That is our hope and prayer that Tony Pirone, Marysol Dominici, and Johannes Mehserle have charges brought up against them for civil rights violations.
The family would love to see civil rights violation charges brought up against Marysol Dominici, Anthony Pirone, and Johannes Mehserle, all 3 former BART police officers, but Marysol Dominici actually got her job back. But I don't think she would face any civil rights charges because she didn't play an active role in Oscar Grant's death. Johannes Mehserle probably not face any of these charges either, because these charges are usually reserved when the state is unsuccessful in getting a conviction against a defendant. And he was found guilty, and he was sentenced to 2 years and served his 1 year in prison. But Anthony Pirone is another story. He was never charged, and when you review this whole case, you can see that Anthony Pirone's behavior is really the main reason why Oscar Grant was shot. His behavior led up to Johannes Mehserle pulling his gun out and shooting Oscar Grant in the back. He was the one acting like a bully on the platform. He was the one using racial slurs, and ultimately BART terminated him from his job for his behavior on that platform. So I wouldn't be surprised if Anthony Pirone was charged with some sort of civil rights violations, but that remains to be seen. But yes, Marysol Dominici appealed her termination and was given her job back because there are labor contracts that state that an arbitrator makes the final decision. And a state arbitrator overturned BART's decision to terminate Marysol Dominici. And she was terminated because she wasn't honest in the interviews that she gave to BART investigators, and she wasn't honest in the preliminary hearing for the case against Johannes Mehserle. Now, I witnessed her testify in the trial in Los Angeles, and it was clear she wasn't honest about the crowd that was on the BART platform. She testified that there was a huge crowd that was threatening her when she arrived, and the BART video clearly shows that there was no one on that platform when she arrived. But a state arbitrator overturned BART's decision to terminate her, and apparently right now she's working with BART as a police officer today. So I'm sure that family is furious about that as well. But thanks for checking out StreetGangs.com.